In a world where betrayal hides behind every polished handshake, one corporation's darkest secret ignites a chain of events no one can stop. As power-hungry elites clash in a silent war of manipulation, whistleblowers vanish, alliances crumble, and a single truth threatens to tear the empire apart. Every chapter exposes deeper corruption, every revelation tightening the noose around those who dared to seek justice. This is not just a battle for control. It's a fight for survival, identity, and the last shred of humanity within a system built on lies. When the final move is played, only one question remains. Who truly wins in a world built on deception? In a stunning development inside the headquarters of Titan Core Solutions this morning, dozens of employees, many of them long-serving contributors, were abruptly dismissed in what the company describes as a necessary restructuring. Among those unexpectedly cut was a respected senior analyst known for leading several of the firm's most profitable data initiatives. Sources say the layoffs occurred without prior notice, leaving staff blindsided and shell-shocked. During an internal briefing, CEO Malcolm Greystone addressed the remaining workforce, calling the mass termination nothing personal, and insisting it was part of a broader optimization plan. However, internal insiders tell a different story. The cuts appear deliberately timed to boost short-term financial optics ahead of Titan Core's high-stakes $300 million merger, scheduled for final negotiations next quarter. The dismissed analyst, who had spent years building the company's predictive market frameworks, was escorted from the building shortly after being given the news. Witnesses reported a palpable tension as colleagues watched the departure, many whispering fears about the true motivations behind the sudden downsizing. Some described the mood as funeral-like, noting that loyalty and performance offered no protection. Financial experts analyzing Titan Core's recent move suggest the layoffs were strategically engineered to reduce operational costs and give investors the illusion of surging profitability, an approach critics call cosmetic cleansing. While the company publicly denies any connection to the merger, leaked communication hints that board members were pushing aggressively for headcount reductions to strengthen their negotiating stance. Yet in the chaos of the dismissals, Titan Core may have made a critical miscalculation. According to confidential sources, the senior analyst who was terminated still possesses an encrypted access key linked to the company's undisclosed merger algorithm, a proprietary tool that houses predictive modeling, revenue simulations, and internal risk assessments. Its sensitivity is considered so high that only a handful of executives even know it exists. As the former employee stepped out of the building for the last time, observers noted a calm, almost unnerving composure. While publicly silent, insiders close to the matter suggest that humiliation has already begun fermenting into quiet resolve. What Titan Core's leadership does not yet realize is that the analyst they cast aside may be holding the very key capable of unraveling the colossal merger they are desperate to secure. Less than 24 hours after Titan Core's mass layoffs shocked the corporate world, new revelations suggest the situation is far more volatile than the company is willing to admit. Multiple insiders have confirmed that the recently terminated senior analyst, whose departure drew significant attention yesterday, held deeper access to Titan Core's digital infrastructure than executive leadership realized. According to cybersecurity specialists familiar with the company's internal structure, the analyst was one of only 3 individuals authorized to handle the offline backups of Titan Core's secretive merger algorithm vault, a tightly encrypted repository containing confidential projections and undisclosed financial scenarios for the upcoming $300 million deal. This oversight has raised major concerns among regulatory watchers. If true, Titan Core has allowed sensitive assets to slip outside controlled custody during the most delicate phase of its merger negotiations. One former SEC auditor commented, "This isn't just a clerical mistake, this is a structural breach of their own governance." In a development that adds fuel to the growing firestorm, sources report that the analyst has already begun reviewing fragments of the offline archive from home. What they discovered, according to those close to the situation, is far more explosive than even the analyst initially anticipated. Early findings include inconsistencies in projected revenue growth and discrepancies in layoff documentation submitted to investors. Several leaked screenshots, whose authenticity is still being verified, suggest that certain Titan Core executives may have manipulated future earnings models to artificially inflate valuation in preparation for the merger. If confirmed, this could constitute deliberate investor deception, a violation carrying severe legal consequences. Meanwhile, Titan Core executives have entered what insiders describe as containment mode. Emergency meetings have been held behind closed doors, and internal communications have shifted to heavily encrypted channels. One source claims the board is terrified that the wrong person has the right key. The protagonist, whose quiet departure yesterday was overshadowed by corporate theatrics, now finds themselves at the center of a potential financial earthquake. Those who know them say something changed as soon as they accessed the data. Humiliation turning unmistakably into calculation. They're done being a victim, a colleague shared anonymously. This time, they're holding the detonator. In response, Titan Core's legal division has rushed to draft confidentiality warnings aimed indirectly at the analyst. However, experts note that such warnings may lack enforceability if the documents reveal criminal misconduct or fraudulent reporting practices. In such cases, whistleblowers are legally protected. Social media is already buzzing with speculation, with hashtags like #TitanCoreLeak and #MergerMeltdown beginning to trend. Investors, rattled by rumors of deeper instability, have started closely monitoring Titan Core stock for early signs of volatility. Several activist funds have reportedly begun reaching out quietly to former employees, including the analyst. Titan Core's crisis now hinges on a single precarious truth. The person they discarded might be the only one capable of exposing everything they tried so hard to hide. What began as a routine layoff has transformed into a ticking corporate time bomb, and the countdown has officially begun. As Titan Core reels from rising speculation over its compromised merger data, new information suggests the situation may be slipping even further out of the corporation's control. Sources close to the dismissed senior analyst confirm they have now unlocked multiple encrypted sectors of the merger archive, revealing a labyrinth of internal communications previously hidden from oversight. Among the recovered files are email threads between CEO Malcolm Greystone and select board members discussing strategies to optimize headcount optics, a phrase experts interpret as coded language for targeted layoffs meant to mislead external auditors. The tone of the exchanges, according to legal analysts, borders on willful manipulation rather than corporate necessity. Even more alarming are documents outlining Scenario Delta, a confidential model projecting the company's financial survival if the merger collapses. The projection paints a grim picture. Without the deal, Titan Core may face liquidity issues within the next 18 months. This revelation directly contradicts the corporation's public claims of financial stability. For the former analyst, these discoveries have transformed their personal narrative from victim to potential whistleblower with a powerful arsenal. Investigators tracking the situation report that the analyst has begun organizing the files into a structured timeline, indicating intent to expose the company's actions with precision rather than impulse. But the archive didn't just contain spreadsheets and forecasts. Hidden in deeper folders were voice memos and meeting recordings never meant to see daylight. In one recovered audio clip, an executive can be heard declaring, "Trim the silent ones first, they won't fight back." The bitter irony is unmistakable. The silent one now holds the very evidence capable of toppling them. Titan Core's leadership, sensing the slow tightening of the noose, has quietly triggered an internal digital lockdown. Access privileges have been revoked across multiple departments, with IT staff instructed to track potential data breaches. Yet insiders claim the company still has no way to retrieve or remotely erase the offline key the analyst possesses. Corporate security teams have begun discreet inquiries into the analyst's activities, even contacting former co-workers in hopes of piecing together their current intentions. But attempts to locate their digital footprint have proven futile. The analyst has avoided cloud backups entirely, operating through isolated systems designed specifically to evade detection. Meanwhile, the analyst's emotional state has shifted dramatically. According to a close acquaintance, what began as shock and humiliation has crystallized into an unwavering resolve. "They're not acting out of anger anymore," the source said. "They're acting with purpose, methodical, controlled, almost frighteningly calm." Financial commentators warn that if the analyst leaks even a fraction of the material now in their possession, the $300 million merger could implode overnight. Already, subtle tension is visible between Titan Core and its merger partner, whose executives have reportedly asked for additional reassurance regarding internal compliance integrity. The stage is set for a confrontation that could reshape the corporate landscape. Titan Core is spiraling into defensive chaos, while the analyst, once dismissed as insignificant, has quietly assembled a strategic arsenal capable of detonating the entire merger. And with every file unlocked, every secret unveiled, the countdown accelerates toward an inevitable reckoning. The fallout from Titan Core's hidden scandals deepens as new developments reveal the dismissed analyst is no longer simply uncovering corruption but actively constructing a coordinated counterstrike. Sources close to the situation describe a shift from quiet investigation to calculated preparation, a transformation that has executives growing increasingly anxious. Within private networks, the analyst has begun assembling every recovered document into a unified timeline of deception. Leaked descriptions suggest the archive now resembles a blueprint of Titan Core's misconduct, connecting falsified projections, covert discussions, and internal memos that leadership once believed buried forever. Journalists known for dismantling corporate empires have reportedly received anonymous messages containing hints of the brewing crisis. Although no full leak has surfaced, the tone of these communications is described as threateningly precise, suggesting that the analyst is timing each reveal with surgical intent. Insiders whisper that several activist investors have already taken interest in the growing turmoil. Their involvement indicates that Titan Core's once stable financial fortress is beginning to crack, and whispers of regulatory concern are spreading through the industry like wildfire. Even more troubling for Titan Core, cyberforensic experts claim the analyst has built a secure offline environment designed to keep every incriminating file beyond the corporation's reach. Attempts by Titan Core's security division to track or trace the former employee have repeatedly failed, intensifying fears of an unavoidable public detonation. Meanwhile, internal tensions at Titan Core have escalated into chaos. Departments are reporting unexplained data access freezes, frantic emergency meetings, and a sudden shift toward defensive communication protocols. Employees describe an atmosphere of panic, as though leadership is bracing for an incoming strike. Former colleagues of the analyst say the quiet, diligent worker they once knew has changed. Humiliation has hardened into purpose, and purpose into a relentless drive. Observers note a new calm intensity, the kind seen in someone who has already accepted the path ahead and refuses to turn back. Multiple insiders report that the analyst is constructing not just a leak, but a multi-layered release system capable of triggering further disclosures if any attempt is made to silence or intimidate them. In corporate circles, this silent mechanism is already being referred to as a digital pressure bomb. Market strategists warn that Titan Core's merger partners are growing restless. Rumors of data manipulation, leadership misconduct, and hidden liabilities have begun circulating within high-level financial groups. Confidence in the deal is slipping, and the slightest shock could destabilize the entire negotiation. As the archive grows more organized and the tension more unbearable, one truth becomes undeniable. The analyst is no longer reacting to injustice. They are engineering a reckoning. Titan Core moves in fear, while the person it discarded prepares an exacting retaliation that threatens to collapse the merger and expose the corporation's darkest truths. Titan Core entered a new phase of crisis today as unusual disruptions began erupting across multiple departments. Anonymous leaks, unexplained audit requests, and unexpected financial inquiries appeared almost simultaneously, creating a wave of confusion that executives have been unable to contain. Sources inside the company describe the situation as the beginning of a purge. Employees report that previously overlooked inconsistencies in data systems are resurfacing as external firms request clarifications on financial models connected to the upcoming merger. These inquiries arrive with impeccable timing, mirroring the analyst's known access path to the internal archive, suggesting a deliberate strategy to expose Titan Core piece by piece. The sudden appearance of red flags has forced the corporation to initiate a full internal audit, though many speculate it is already too late. Several board members were seen entering the building before dawn, their expressions described as ashen and storm-struck. Panic is beginning to replace the confident facade once displayed by upper management. Corporate communications leaked to the media reveal a tone of desperation among executives. Messages urging staff to stay focused and avoid speculation contradict the visible strain within the workplace. One internal memo reportedly warns leaders to prepare for external escalation that may arise without warning. Meanwhile, the dismissed analyst continues to operate from the shadows, carefully orchestrating the unfolding chaos. According to individuals close to the situation, they have begun releasing selective fragments of the timeline they assembled, choosing details subtle enough to raise suspicion but not yet powerful enough to reveal the full conspiracy. These small revelations are triggering significant internal tension. Supervisors are questioning subordinates, departments are accusing each other of breaches, and digital surveillance has reached unprecedented levels. The fear inside Titan Core is growing, not because of what has surfaced, but because everyone senses something far worse is coming. Market analysts observing the situation are beginning to question Titan Core's stability. Investors have noted unusual fluctuations and are quietly preparing for potential fallout. A single major leak, they warn, could trigger an irreversible collapse of confidence in the merger. Experts emphasize that this chaotic state is not accidental. Every sign points to a coordinated effort designed to destabilize Titan Core from within. The analyst appears to be pushing the company toward a breaking point, forcing leadership to face the consequences of the secrets they thought buried. Employees still loyal to the analyst describe these events as karmic, calling it justice in motion. They recall how quietly the analyst once worked, how quickly their accomplishments were forgotten, and how coldly they were dismissed. Now those same leaders are discovering what it feels like to be powerless. With each passing hour, Titan Core teeters closer to the edge. The purge has only begun, and every leak, every audit, and every inconsistency magnifies the pressure. The storm gathering around the merger is no longer a threat. It is a countdown, and the analyst holds the final trigger. Pressure inside Titan Core has reached a breaking point as new developments surrounding the merger draw the attention of external regulators. According to high-level sources, several government agencies have begun requesting clarification on Titan Core's financial disclosures, a move that suggests the ripples created by the analyst's calculated leaks have reached far beyond the company's walls. Executives from the merger partner reportedly arrived unannounced at Titan Core's headquarters this morning, demanding immediate explanations for discrepancies that surfaced in recent financial reviews. Their sudden arrival caused a visible stir throughout the building, with witnesses describing the atmosphere as tense enough to snap. Internal monitors show that Titan Core's once stable projections have begun to buckle under scrutiny. The selective leaks released in the previous days have prompted analysts across the industry to re-evaluate the corporation's valuation. Rumors of inflated earnings and manipulated operating costs have started circulating among major investment groups. In response, Titan Core leadership has attempted to reassure their prospective partners with hastily arranged presentations. These briefings, however, have raised even more questions. Several executives were reportedly unable to defend inconsistencies within their own models, fueling suspicion that the company's internal structure is crumbling under its own deception. Meanwhile, the dismissed analyst continues to pull strings from behind the scenes. Individuals familiar with their strategy claim the analyst has withheld the most damaging evidence, waiting for the exact moment when Titan Core is weakest. This restraint is being described by investigators as a masterclass in controlled demolition. Employees at Titan Core paint a picture of a workplace consumed by fear. Conversations have become whispered, hallways tense, and every unexpected email or request from leadership sparks anxiety. Staff members admit they are preparing themselves for the possibility that the merger, once touted as a transformative victory, may never materialize. The merger partner, alarmed by the rising instability, has reportedly assembled an emergency review team to determine whether continuing the deal poses unacceptable risks. Their concern deepened after discovering that Titan Core's financial backbone appears heavily dependent on assumptions that no longer align with external audits. Market observers warn that the situation is rapidly becoming unsalvageable. Stock fluctuations have intensified, and investors are on high alert, unsure whether to hold out or brace for a catastrophic collapse. The financial world is watching closely, sensing that a major corporate implosion may be imminent. Sources within the analyst circle hint that they are now preparing the final stage of their plan, the release of evidence strong enough to shatter any remaining trust between Titan Core and its merger partner. The company's leadership, desperately trying to maintain composure, seems painfully aware that one more strategic blow could end everything. As the sun sets on another tumultuous day, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The merger stands on the edge of a knife. Titan Core is trapped between external pressure, internal chaos, and the quiet, deliberate vengeance of the person they cast aside. And the next chapter may deliver the strike that pushes the entire empire into freefall. Titan Core's leadership woke to a devastating shock this morning as a confidential package containing fragments of the merger algorithm, the very asset they believed safely hidden, surfaced in the inboxes of multiple regulatory officers. Though the fragments were carefully selected and heavily redacted, experts immediately recognized them as internal Titan Core data. The message was unmistakable. The analyst had finally stepped into the open. The discovery triggered an immediate emergency lockdown within the corporation. Executives rushed into crisis meetings as external agencies demanded urgent explanations. The identity of the source was not disclosed in the message, but Titan Core's board knew instantly who was responsible. Their greatest fear had materialized. The key they ignored had now become a weapon aimed squarely at them. Regulators reportedly halted all progress on the merger pending a full review. This move sent shockwaves through the financial sector, with analysts noting that such intervention so late in the process is practically a death sentence for large-scale corporate deals. Titan Core stock plummeted within hours, erasing millions in market value before midday. Inside the company, morale has collapsed. Employees describe the environment as silent chaos. Panicked executives running between conference rooms, security personnel monitoring every digital device, and staff receiving orders to avoid discussing the situation even privately. Yet despite these attempts to control the narrative, the truth continues to spread. Journalists who previously received anonymous hints now confirm they are receiving more substantial material. While no full leak has been released to the public, the volume of incoming data suggests the analyst has begun activating the next phase of their plan. One investigative reporter described the new files as the kind of evidence that can end careers. Meanwhile, Titan Core's merger partner is said to be furious. Internal messages reveal their executives feel deceived, misled, and endangered, with some even questioning whether Titan Core intentionally hid the risk of internal sabotage. Their legal teams have already begun evaluating exit clauses, preparing to walk away before the damage spreads any further. Amid the turmoil, the analyst remains completely out of reach. Cyber teams have attempted to trace the origin of the redacted packet but found only sophisticated routing loops, each one redirecting to an offline server impossible to access remotely. This isn't random, one specialist admitted. It's strategic, methodical, and years ahead of Titan Core's own security. Former co-workers who once underestimated the analyst now admit they misjudged the quiet professional. They recall a person who rarely raised their voice but always saw patterns others overlooked, a trait that now seems terrifyingly advantageous. Titan Core thought they fired someone harmless, one colleague commented. But they fired someone who understood every hidden flaw in the system. Financial commentators warn that Titan Core is entering the most dangerous phase of corporate collapse, the point where external distrust and internal panic collide. Without trust, the merger cannot survive. Without the merger, Titan Core's fragile financial structure may buckle completely. As the day ends, one consensus emerges across regulators, investors, and analysts alike: the key has turned. And now, the corporation that engineered mass layoffs in the name of profit faces the full force of a vengeance crafted with precision, patience, and undeniable justice. The pressure inside the executive boardroom surged once again as the echoes of the previous chapter's revelations still hung in the air. Just when everyone thought the situation had reached its peak, the main screen flashed red with an emergency alert. Confidential data, information meant to be sealed away forever, had been leaked to the public, and the countdown toward total collapse had already begun. The CEO, who once carried himself with unwavering certainty, now stared blankly at the chaos unfolding on screen. His hands trembled as real-time reports poured in: panicked investors, plummeting stock values, and a swarm of media forces crowding the building's entrance with relentless demands for answers. Amid the rising panic, the protagonist stood motionless, absorbing every detail of the unfolding catastrophe. The pattern, the timing, the precision. None of it was random. The attack was not merely a blow to the corporation. It was the final move in a long calculated game orchestrated by a hidden adversary who had been pulling strings from the shadows. Suddenly, a new anonymous message appeared within the company's internal system. But this time the tone was far colder than before. The text contained only a single line, yet it sent a chill through everyone who read it. This is only the beginning. Prepare for the final reckoning. Silence fell like a hammer. Every executive exchanged uneasy glances, fully aware that whatever was happening now was just the surface of a far deeper conspiracy. The protagonist leaned closer to the monitor, recognizing a strange signature embedded in the message, a clue that linked directly to the mysterious figure they had been chasing for months. Outside the boardroom, tension exploded across the building. Security alarms blared, employees ran for cover, and the once calm corporate headquarters descended into utter pandemonium. News drones hovered around the skyscraper like vultures, broadcasting every second of the unfolding disaster to millions of viewers worldwide. The protagonist quickly took command, instructing the crisis team to secure all remaining systems. But even as they scrambled, new breaches appeared like cracks spreading across glass. Whoever was behind this wasn't just attacking, they were dismantling the corporation piece by piece, forcing it into a corner with ruthless precision. In the midst of the chaos, an encrypted call came through on the protagonist's personal device. The distorted voice on the other end spoke slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every word. "You thought you understood the game," the caller said. "But you never realized you were already playing my ending." Rage and fear collided within the protagonist, but focus quickly returned. This was no longer about corporate survival. It was personal. The unseen enemy had crossed the final line, dragging everyone into a war that could no longer be avoided. The protagonist knew there was only one option left: strike back, and strike hard. As the chapter closed, the alarms intensified, the city lights flickered, and the entire building seemed to brace for impact. The protagonist stepped toward the window, watching the storm gather outside. The final battle was no longer on the horizon. It had arrived, and its consequences would reshape everything that came after. The executive boardroom remained shrouded in tension as the chaotic aftermath of the last chapter still clung to every corner of the room. Monitors flickered violently, reflecting the panic-stricken faces of the remaining executives who refused to flee, hoping the crisis could still be contained. But deep down, every one of them knew the situation had already spiraled beyond control. Outside, the city skyline glowed with a strange, urgent energy as media helicopters circled the building like predatory birds sensing a fatal weakness. The protagonist watched the swirling chaos from the window, realizing that the corporation's downfall was no longer a possibility. It was becoming an inevitability. And someone somewhere had planned it with terrifying accuracy. A sudden loud beep cut through the room as another flood of leaked documents appeared online, spreading across platforms faster than the team could shut them down. These were not just numbers or dry financial reports. They contained internal conversations, private negotiations, and ruthless layoff strategies that painted the company in the darkest light imaginable. The public outrage ignited instantly. The CEO staggered backward, gripping the armrest of a chair as he read headlines emerging in real time. Each one hammered another nail into the corporation's coffin. The protagonist observed him silently, remembering the arrogance he once wore like armor. Now that armor was gone, replaced by a fear he could no longer hide. Without warning, the lights flickered and then dimmed to a dull, ominous glow. The internal network was no longer responding. Even emergency backups were failing. A chilling realization spread through the room. The enemy was no longer simply leaking data. They were infiltrating the entire corporate infrastructure, suffocating the company from the inside out. The crisis team scrambled to activate the last remaining firewall, but a new message suddenly materialized across the main screen. The words appeared slowly, almost tauntingly, as though written by an unseen hand savoring the moment. "You buried me with your layoffs. Now watch as I bury everything you built." Gasps echoed around the room. The protagonist's heart tightened. This wasn't just an attack. It was revenge, a meticulously crafted retaliation from someone harmed by the corporation's ruthless decisions. For the first time, the executives began to understand the depth of the destruction they had caused in the past and the enemy they had unknowingly created. Security burst into the room announcing that unauthorized individuals were attempting to breach the lower floors. The building was no longer just under digital assault. It was facing a physical one as well. The executives panicked, their voices rising into a chaotic chorus of fear, but the protagonist remained eerily calm, piecing together every clue left behind. The protagonist stepped toward the main console, overriding the failing systems to pull up a final encrypted file. A file that had been hidden even from the upper leadership. As it opened, the truth fell into place like a devastating revelation. Someone inside the company had helped the saboteur. Someone with access. Someone high up. The revelation of an internal traitor left the boardroom frozen in shock, but the crisis did not wait for anyone to recover. Sirens continued to blare throughout the building as digital alarms collided with physical security breaches, creating a perfect storm of panic. The protagonist knew that the next phase of this catastrophe was already unfolding, and the company had only moments left before the damage became irreversible. Outside the skyscraper, reporters formed a dense wall of flashing lights and raised microphones, screaming questions that bounced off the glass facade. The entire world was watching, desperate for answers, and every second of silence from corporate leadership only fueled suspicion. Investors were demanding immediate clarification, but the executive team had no explanation that wouldn't incriminate them further. Inside the control room, technicians scrambled to regain access to the collapsing network, but each attempt was met with counterattacks stronger than the last. The system logs revealed something even more alarming. The saboteur wasn't merely leaking information anymore. They were manipulating the merger algorithm itself. If the algorithm was corrupted, the $300 million deal would collapse instantly. The CEO tried to rally the team, but his voice cracked under the weight of fear. Every decision he made in the past year, every ruthless layoff, every shortcut taken in the name of profit, had built the foundation for this collapse. And now, the consequences were spiraling far beyond his control. The protagonist watched him struggle, remembering the cold dismissal that started all of this. Suddenly, the massive central screen rebooted with a harsh static buzz. When the display stabilized, a live video feed appeared. It showed a masked figure standing in an empty warehouse, surrounded by servers humming ominously. The figure didn't speak at first. They simply tilted their head as though savoring the chaos they had unleashed, as though listening to the corporation suffocate. Then the voice came, distorted, cold, and unmistakably filled with vengeance. They declared that the merger would be dismantled piece by piece and that the company would feel the same helplessness they forced onto thousands through their layoffs. It wasn't just retaliation anymore. It was a mission to erase Titan Core's legacy entirely. Executives shouted at the security team to trace the location, but each attempt was blocked by a wall of shifting proxies and encrypted reroutes. The masked figure taunted them, claiming they were already inside the heart of the corporation. With every word, the temperature in the room seemed to drop further, as if the building itself understood the threat lurking in its circuits. The protagonist stepped forward, demanding the masked figure reveal their endgame. But the figure only responded with a chilling message. The final countdown had already begun. They claimed that the merger algorithm would detonate itself digitally, wiping out all records, backups, and financial forecasting models. The deal would collapse publicly, spectacularly, and permanently. At that moment, the lights dimmed again, and the building experienced a power surge so powerful that monitors flickered like dying stars. A timer appeared on the central screen. No numbers, only a pulsing red circle shrinking with each second. Its meaning was unmistakable. The company was running out of time. The chapter closed with the protagonist turning away from the executives and heading for the door. They knew the truth now. Exposing the traitor, locating the saboteur, and stopping the countdown would require actions the boardroom was too terrified to take. And as the red circle continued to pulse, one thing became clear. The climax of this corporate war was inevitable, and the protagonist was walking straight into its heart. The protagonist stepped into the dim hallway, leaving behind the frantic shouts of collapsing leadership. The red pulse of the countdown still reflected faintly on the glass walls, as if the entire building were beating with a dying heart. Every instinct warned that the traitor hiding inside Titan Core was watching, listening, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And with the merger on the brink of implosion, that moment had nearly arrived. As the protagonist moved toward the operations floor, the emergency lights flickered again, casting long, distorted shadows that made the once familiar corridors feel hostile. Documents were scattered across the floor, abandoned in the chaos. Phones rang unanswered. It was as though the entire corporation had turned into a ghost city in a matter of minutes. A sudden noise behind a glass partition made the protagonist freeze. Inside the darkened office, a silhouette moved with a purpose that didn't belong to an ordinary employee. The figure was typing rapidly into a portable console connected directly to one of the company's internal nodes. It took only a second for realization to strike. This wasn't an outside hacker. This was the traitor the masked saboteur had warned about. The protagonist pushed open the door, and the figure spun around, revealing one of Titan Core's senior data architects, a person trusted with nearly unrestricted access. Their eyes were wild, a mixture of fear, desperation, and something more dangerous, conviction. They claimed the merger was built on deceit, that the corporation deserved the downfall rushing toward it. Before the protagonist could respond, the traitor slammed a command into the console, sending a ripple across the building's power grid. Lights burst in a cascade of sparks, and the floor rumbled as auxiliary systems snapped offline. The protagonist lunged forward, but the architect slipped past with practiced agility, disappearing into the maze of cubicles like a phantom fueled by rage. Security alarms shrieked overhead, announcing that the internal breach had escalated to critical. Surveillance feeds flickered across nearby monitors, revealing employees fleeing stairwells while security officers chased shadows too fast to confirm. The corporation's last line of defense was collapsing under the weight of betrayal from within. Realizing time was slipping away, the protagonist opened a secure terminal and accessed the shrinking red pulse of the countdown. A new layer of encryption had been added. Aggressive, relentless, engineered to destroy the merger's core algorithm the moment the timer hit zero. It was sabotage far beyond anything the masked attacker could do alone. The traitor inside had given them everything they needed. As the protagonist struggled to counter the attack, another transmission appeared on the screen. The masked saboteur's distorted voice returned, but this time, it was filled with an unsettling calm. They acknowledged the traitor's contribution and declared that Titan Core's collapse was no longer just revenge. It had become justice for every employee discarded for the sake of profit. The protagonists slammed their fist against the console, knowing there was only one path left. They had to stop both enemies before the merger detonated digitally. But the building trembled again as another system failed, and the masked saboteur warned that the final phase was already in motion. Titan Core had entered its last moments. The protagonists sprinted down the trembling corridor as the building's structural alarms roared overhead, each warning tone echoing like a countdown to catastrophe. The air smelled of overheated circuits and panic, and the red emergency lights washed everything in a sinister glow. The path to the server vault felt unervingly long, as if the building were stretching itself to delay any chance of salvation. With every step, the protagonist could feel the weight of eyes watching from the shadows. The traitor was still inside the tower, somewhere between the maze of offices and the lower floors, and the masked saboteur continued exerting control from afar. Both forces converged toward a single outcome: complete digital annihilation of the $300 million merger. As the protagonist approached the reinforced vault door, a violent tremor shook the entire floor. Ceiling panels crashed down. Screens shattered in cascading sparks. It became clear that the saboteur had shifted tactics again, moving from digital destruction to destabilizing the physical infrastructure itself. The corporation wasn't just being dismantled. It was being erased in every sense of the word. Inside the dim vault entrance, 2 security officers lay unconscious, victims of a disabling pulse from a handheld device left on the ground. The traitor had been there, and had cleared the path. The protagonist knelt briefly, checking for pulses. They were alive, but dazed, entirely unaware of the crisis tightening around them. The vault door's lock showed signs of unauthorized override attempts, deep scratches marking the steel edges. Yet somehow, the traitor had failed to fully breach it. The protagonist seized the opportunity, entering their own access key, one of the few pieces of leverage the company had entirely overlooked when they orchestrated the layoffs. The mechanism clicked, heavy and final, and the door opened with a slow metallic groan. Inside the vault, rows of towering servers glowed faintly, blinking desperately as the sabotage continued ravaging the system. The air hummed with electricity and danger. The protagonist rushed toward the central console, the heart of the merger algorithm, only to find the countdown pulse projected on every surface. Shrinking, tightening, approaching its final phase. Before they could initiate a counter-sequence, a voice echoed through the vault, amplified through the building's internal speakers. The masked saboteur addressed them directly, their tone almost gentle, as if they had been expecting this confrontation. They explained that the merger algorithm was already fractured beyond repair, and that any attempt to save it would only hasten the collapse. The protagonist refused to accept defeat. They launched into manual override protocol, fingers racing across holographic controls, forcing the system into a recovery mode that hadn't been used in years. Lights flickered as the servers fought to comply, caught between 2 opposing commands, salvation and destruction. The room vibrated with conflict. Then a silhouette appeared in the vault doorway. It was the traitor, breathless, eyes blazing with unwavering resolve. They stepped forward, holding a drive that pulsed with the same red rhythm as the countdown. They claimed it was the final piece of the saboteur's plan, a catalyst that would guarantee the merger's implosion and expose the corporation's corruption to the world with absolute finality. In the end, the corporation that once thrived on ruthless ambition collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance, undone not by external competition but by the very people it discarded in pursuit of profit. The protagonist, armed with the forgotten access key and a resolve forged through betrayal, confronted a traitor driven by despair and a saboteur fueled by vengeance, each representing the consequences of Titan Core's cruelty. As the countdown thundered toward oblivion and the tower shook with the consequences of corporate greed, the truth became undeniable. The layoffs meant to strengthen a $300 million merger had instead ignited a chain reaction of rebellion. In that final moment, caught between justice and destruction, the protagonist realized that no algorithm, no profit margin, and no polished press release could save a company that had already lost its humanity. And as the digital storm reached its peak, Titan Core faced the fate it had earned. A downfall written not in numbers, but in the shattered lives it had tried to forget.